Okay. This is like a important video, I would say. So like I might actually have to edit this one. And before we really get into it, I just want to say, allegations for everything, just for legal reasons, but I'm sure you guys have all been seeing a little bit of it. I mean, we've definitely seen some of this stuff in the past, and like it's like it's like a, what's it called? Like an open secret or like a well-known secret kind of thing. With Dan Schneider, and that documentary came out, or it's still coming out. But there's like 3 episodes out, like as of recording this. And I watched all three, and I've been watching other things about it, and I've been like, I've been writing notes. I'm really unsure if I want to do like this is just one large video, or if I want to do more like um, like each section gets its own video. What I think I'm gonna do, like at least for right now, is I'm gonna do like a general thing, explain like everything a little bit, and then I'll make one specific video about like Brian Peck and all the things he did, and like Jason Michael and all the things he did, and then like the Dan Schneider one, because that's gonna be like the main one, because Dan Schneider was like the ringleader of this whole operation. But for any of you that are like uncomfortable, with you know these kind of things, and things these kind of things happen to kids, just click off now. um I don't want to make you guys uncomfortable, but if you want to like listen and hear me talk about it, then you're more than welcome to. But if you watched Nickelodeon as a kid, you saw Drake and Josh, The Amanda Show, you saw these different like live action like shows instead of just the cartoons. um like as a kid I would notice some of these. I'm like, they're showing their feet a lot, that's weird. um but you never really thought much of it, you know you were just like, oh, it's weird and like so random. It's like it's weird, wacky, funny, haha, oh that's weird. It's like random, like it's just weird and silly. And then now growing up, and looking back at the shows that like me and my friends used to watch, we are like, huh, that's a little weird. And if you watch there was an interview with Dan Schneider and what's his name, Tebow, the guy from iCarly that would put things on a stick. He like interviewed it, and he did really poorly. Like he's a terrible interviewer. He was asking all these like really like sugar coated like softball questions, and then Dan Schneider was like, it felt like he was reading off a teleprompter. He was like, "I'm sorry for my continuous lapse in judgment. I shouldn't have done that. I wouldn't do that now. I should have done that then. I was just really stressed out," which doesn't excuse it like whatsoever. Like everyone's been stressed out before, but I'm not like doing the things that he did. It doesn't excuse it. Um, and some of the things I wrote down were like, there was a weird one where there was like a hole, where like the door is like a glory hole, and then um Brian Peck, which was like Pickle Boy, would shove the pickle through the hole, and then some dude like picked it up and started eating it very like sexually, and it was really weird. Like I don't know, like they just felt off. And there was just a lot of like really weird small things. um I think the main person that they really talked about, and that there's a lot about, um is Brian Peck, who did go to prison, but it's not nearly as much time as he should. I think he had like 11 charges of child sexual abuse. Um, and this all really like started to like shed light and come to light because a while ago Drake did go to court over it. And he didn't have his name on there. It was like a John Doe, like a Joe Smith kind of thing, where like they didn't have their actual name. And the thing that really stood out to me in the documentary was like, after this all was like said and done, Dan Schneider's like, "Hey Drake, was it you? Were you the person that Brian did this to?" And I'm like, how did he know? And why was he being so comforting and being like, "Oh, I'll keep you safe, I've got you." Like right after that feels really, I don't know, I don't know, that feels really weird. But a lot of weird things with Brian Peck, like, Drake would be getting dressed and Brian would go help him get dressed, and then Drake's dad would be like, "Hey, he can dress himself." Or like they'd be like looking over like lines and stuff, and then Brian would like put his hand around Drake's waist and be like super touchy with them, and then Drake's dad is like would talk to one of the coworkers and be like, "Hey, I don't like that he's touching him like that. Why is he touching him like that?" And they're like, "Oh, he's gay, it's fine," which is also like super like homophobic. Like you're making it like way worse for gay people to be like, "Oh yeah, they're just touchy. Like they like touching kids." Like that's not helping gay people. They have it hard enough. Maybe don't put that on there. Like I do have some gay friends who are a little more touchy, but not like that. Especially not to a child. That is no, no way at all. And those like some weird things, like a few of the people mentioned and a lot of people have noticed, like Brian Peck would always try to have people, like he always had Drake over at his house and he like groomed the mom and like put a wedge between Drake's dad and Drake, saying like, "Oh yeah, your dad's stealing money from you. No parent should be a manager, blah 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 blah." Ended up getting Drake to sleep at his house many times cuz Drake lived farther away and all the additions were like near, where Brian lived, things like that. And one thing that really stood out to me is that he had a painting from John Wayne Gacy, the the killer clown guy, and they were pen pals, and he kept his letters by his bed, and he proudly showed those off. And I'm like, were these not raising red flags for everybody within like a million miles from him? Like what? Like if I had a friend who did that, I would be like, "Oh, bye bye." Like what? It was just so weird. And like even weirder, like before the sexual assault on Drake, like Brian would go to like all of Drake's shows. You know, they were like LA area, and Drake would have a show in like San Diego and Brian would be there. He played at like the a festival, Brian would be there. Of course Dan Schneider and some of the other like cast and crew would go to some of Drake's shows if they were like in LA. But it doesn't matter like how far of a drive it was. Brian was at every show, and Brian would bring some of his weird friends to the shows as well. And then one night, Drake woke up to Brian on top of him, and then Brian went like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know what took over me." But then he continued it like for a while until they took him to court and like got him arrested. Um, but like what's so weird to me is Drake's mom. Like she was so easily convinced. Like that, what really like took the curve and like bent it to like stop the abuse was Drake's girlfriend's mom, who noticed it. How does your girlfriend's mom notice it faster than your own mother? And the dad knew. Well, he didn't know, but he was very like uneasy, and he would mention like, I don't want Drake alone with Brian, I don't trust him, and he was very like worried about it, and he got like pushed out of it and stuff by Brian. And the mom, I don't know if she just wanted the money or what, but she didn't care. But Drake's girlfriend's mom was like, "Are you okay? Like you're not like he would want to stay at his girlfriend's house all the time." um And one time, and pretty sure it was for Disneyland, Brian kept calling like, "Hey, let's go to Disneyland. Hey, let's go to Disneyland." And he would kept calling like over and over and over. And then the mom picked up, the girlfriend's mom, and she was like, "Why are you calling this child to go alone with him into like Disney?" Like she caught on like super quick, and Drake's actual like birth mother didn't, and that's so weird to me. It is so weird to me. Like how do you not like as a mother pick up on that? Like, are you like, I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's why Brian did what he did, because he knew that the mom was a bad mother and the dad was a good father, so he had to get the dad out of there. If he wanted to like do what he did, because the mom wouldn't care and wouldn't even notice. Um, I slightly blame the mom because she should have been a better parent, but that's also like a hot take. Um, and I don't know, it was really weird. And then later Drake like called with the police there, like listening in and like recording the conversation. They called Brian, and Brian confessed to everything, being like, "Oh yeah, I regret what I did, blah 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 blah." And he kept asking if they were being recorded, and they're like, "What? No." And then they caught him that way. Thankfully, he was, silly enough to just say everything that he did. And I don't know, Brian Brian Peck was definitely weird. I really hope that he didn't do anything to anyone else. He did work for Disney for like not too long after he got fired from Nickelodeon. Which, hopefully he didn't do anything to any of the Nick people there. Hopefully he wasn't there long enough to like groom anybody. Um, but the really weird one was this guy named Jason Michael, or Jason Michael Handy, I think that's his full name. He did get arrested, which was good, but he was a PA, and he was like always hanging around the kids, and they all thought he was a really nice, cool guy. He'd be nice to them. He'd play games with them. He like wrote in their yearbooks and stuff. Like he was just like this cool, sweet guy. But they busted him, and they found like, I think it was over 1,500 photos and like a handful of videos of cheese pizza. And he had like little Ziploc bags with girls' names on it, and he had little tokens like you'd have like, I don't know, like her hairbrush or like a sock, or just something from each of the girls. And the most disturbing one was he had a pair of panties from a 7-year-old girl. That is disgusting. That's gross. That's just evil. Like, give him the chair. He shouldn't, like, just give him the chair. Like, get rid of him. Um, and they found his journals, which were even more disgusting. Like, I can't even say half the stuff that was in there, but he would just talk about how much he likes kids, and he like called himself like uh a bike pedal, Um, and he like totally confessed to everything, and how one day he might snap and just do something to one of them. He needs to satisfy his urges. Like, this really just disgusting, just crazy things that I'm like, oh my gosh, we need like way better like background checks and stuff on these people who are like interacting with these young child actors who I'm sure are already not very mentally well with all the stress, and like the fame and like everything going on in their young minds from being a child actor. And then if they have problems at home, because a lot of them like their families depended on them for like economic reasons, because they were bringing in the most money. And that's why I'm sure a lot of these kids didn't say anything, because they're like, no, I have to put up with it for my family. you know I want to get them out of poverty, kind of things. I forget the kid's name. I think it was Brian. I'm like 99% sure it was Brian, but he's like, I want to get my family out the hood. And he talked about like weird costumes they would put him in. Like, for one, he was like the world's youngest rapper, and he was like a fetus. And of course, like the one, black guy kid on there, they made him the rapper, and he almost cried one time because some of the people were like, "Oh yeah, we should make the bodysuit," because it was like a bodysuit, because fetuses don't wear clothes, but they're not gonna have them naked as much as people like Jason Michael or Brian Peck would want. And people were joking like, "Oh yeah, we should make it charcoal black," like just being crazy racist, just beyond racist. That's like just super racist. Or they had him like nose man, and he had like noses on his shoulders that did not look like noses. and he would like sneeze on people and it was like a cum shot, just all this really, really weird stuff. And there was like a little bit of racism towards like any black actors. Like that seemed a little weird too. Like they liked kids, but if they're a little too dark, they didn't like them as much, which is like it's really gross, and I don't like that. um, and then there's like of course Dan Schneider, the ringleader, the main, the Foot King himself. Um, and he talks about his start. Um, well, he doesn't talk about, but they talk about his start like, oh yeah, Dan Schneider came in the scene, being the silly fat kid, and he wanted to prove himself by like writing. And he got his writing start on all that, which is pretty much like SNL but kids. Um, and it was like the first thing like that really. So that's where he like got his like rise. And everyone would say like, oh yeah, he's like he started off as like a really cool guy. He was like self-deprecating, just he was just funny to be around. Then he just became a monster. He worked kids way longer than they should have been working. Um, he very much like played into his power dynamic, holding the fact that like people's families' financial situation is thanks to him. He like the weird nose costume thing that I was talking about. He definitely played favorites. Like if you guys know like Amanda Bynes, like she was definitely the favorite. Um, who pretty much replaced Katrina. Because Katrina got too old and hit puberty, and she looked too old for Dan Schneider, so she kind of got pushed aside and replaced with Amanda Bynes, which is like, uh oh. And weird too, but I know it's more common was like having the kids go to school on set, which I don't know. For me, because of the situation, I feel like that was just another way to like further separate the kids from their parents and like from the outside world, and just, have them know this and only this, and this is what you're here for, stay on set kind of thing. Um and then even like at times they'd mention like while, the kids were like in school or like going over lines or something, Amanda would be alone with Dan, which isn't which wasn't supposed to happen. I'm pretty sure that's illegal. Um, but they'd be alone, like writing and like just hanging out in his office, like alone, working on lines and doing, who knows what in there, and that scares me a lot. Um, I'm very glad that Jason Michael and Brian Peck, you know, got in trouble for what they did. Clearly, not as much trouble as they should be in, and I really, really hope that they can get Dan Schneider, because if these two like lower level like gremlins got in trouble and they did that much, how much did Dan Schneider do? You know, um, like there's even weird, like all the weird scenes. Like one time Amanda was playing a character called Penelope Taint, and there are like scenes of her like in her bed and stuff. I forget the show. It might be all that, or one of those. But Dan Schneider like plays himself, and yeah, one of the lines was like the kids being like, "Oh yeah, Dan Schneider's the best. He's like God," and that felt really, really weird. And another weird thing was like Josh. Um, I think his last name's Peck, which is weird. Josh like almost defending Dan Schneider, saying he never saw anything like that. So he doesn't think it happened, which was like a really weird stance. And I feel like my own like personal like game theory is Dan Schneider like saw himself in Josh as like the weird fat kid, which is how Dan Schneider started, so he didn't like mess with him. And I feel like Dan Schneider's a little bit of a narcissist. There's always like that one person that they like go easy on or something. Is what I've been seeing some of the comments saying. Like there's always like one person that they're like not terrible to. It was really, really weird. And the Jeanette McCurdy stuff's weird. Like Jeanette McCurdy's mom would blame the cancer coming back on Jeanette McCurdy because she would eat too much. And I saw some of the things saying that like Jeanette McCurdy's mom would starve Jeanette, so she wouldn't like develop, and she would still look like a child, so she can still like act and be useful to Dan Schneider, which I thought was beyond disgusting. What's with like bad moms and like and like child actors, joining the bad mom club. Um, and then Angelique's mom, it was, I'm pretty sure, either Amanda Show or All That she was on, or both. I don't remember too much. Um, the Angelique's mom turned down some sexual advances from people working on the show, and then Angelique started getting less and less screen time. Less lines. She was just like pushed back, like in the placement of like where she was in the scene. You know, like less opportunities for other shows. There was a weird like hot tub interview where like Dan Schneider's in a hot tub fully clothed, and Amanda Bynes is in like a bikini, which is really weird. Jeanette McCurdy was given like alcohol as a kid. Dan Schneider was like terrible to like the female writers. He like illegally made two of them split a salary, made them like bend over desks and like say certain things, make them give them massages. Them and the guys would like exclude them from like little meetings and stuff like that. He said that women can't be funny. You know, all like, he's sexist, he's racist, he's a ped. You know, like all of these terrible things. There was this really weird one to me where like they had one of the kids do like a they had the kids do like a fear factor thing, and one of the kids was like strapped down on the floor and covered in peanut butter, and they watched dogs lick it off, and the kid was shirtless, and that was weird. They were also covered in like worms and like just weird liquidy wet substances on the kids, which I'm sure you can understand where that's going. um Dan was like verbally abusive in like a super hostile work environment. Everyone was worked way more than they should. One of the female writers was supposed to work for I think like 27 weeks, but she was only going to get paid for 16 of them. After they fired the one other female writer, even though one of the messages that it said during the documentary was Dan Schneider says he doesn't see gender when hiring, you know, but definitely leaned towards younger men with zero experience over like these female writers with a ton of experience just because they were women. Female writers, they had like described working for him like being in an abusive relationship. you know all of these like terrible terrible things, and like all of these are like well known like for the most part, and he's not in trouble, but like these like lesser known things done by Jason Michael and Brian Peck, you know that are like coming to light like very recently, and they're in prison. I don't know, it just doesn't make too much sense to me. I think that covers like the basics of everything so far. I'm just like looking through my notes trying to see if there's anything basic that I like really missed, but that's like a general like summary of it. This is definitely gonna be my longest video. And this was mostly me rambling, but I will do like more in-depth ones. Like I'll do I think my first one that I'll do is probably Brian Peck. You know, him being pickle boy and like all these weird things, and like maybe give like a more accurate and detailed like timeline of the whole him grooming Drake and things like that. um but for right now I just wanted to like word vomit out and just give like a synopsis, I guess, of like everything, so you guys can go like, huh, I didn't even know who like, hmm, I didn't know who Jason Michael was. That guy sounds terrible. Or, oh, Brian Peck and John Wayne Gacy? That's really weird. I want to look more into that. Just like a general like information kind of thing is what I was going for. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you enjoyed, I guess, or at least feel more informed because I think this stuff does need to be like shed light on it. Um, not for like my sake, obviously, but just for the sake of like child actors who went through this, and for the safety of future child actors, because we're always gonna have child actors. Just to like let you guys know that as much as somebody seems like they're a nice, super helpful, like cool person, they can still be a monster, and we need to protect the kids. See ya.